discussed Rashi on the plague of darkness, I want to turn to Nachmanides. Ramban, living in Spain in the 13th century, says the following. He says, what does it mean no man could see his brother, nor could anyone rise from his place? What does that mean? Asks Nachmanides. Rashi says, so Nachmanides says as follows. Ki lo haya choshech hazeh afisat or hashemesh sheba shimsham v'haya k'mo layla. He says their darkness was not really just the absence of sunlight, whereby their sun set and it became like nighttime. And the fundamental question is, what is darkness? Is darkness the absence of light, or is darkness its own entity? And you might think, like, who really cares? Like, well, this is like classic Talmudic rabbinic question. What does it matter? Oh no, it matters. If darkness is just the absence of light, so in a little bit, the sun will shine and everything will be light. But if the darkness is a darkness that's its own entity, the light will not be able to push it away. And Nachmanides is telling us that even though typically darkness is the absence of light, even though typically speaking darkness is the absence of light, in this case, the darkness is its own entity. It's similar to what Rashi says, that this is a darkness of gloom. In this case, the darkness is its own entity. And that's what he says, because he says, Haya choshech afela. The darkness was very, very thick. Komar eid av ma'od, a thickness that came down from the sky. And that's why God says, Netei yadcha min hashamayim, stick forth your hand up to the heaven. Lohori misham chashecha gedolah nofelet aleim, to bring down from them a large darkness falling upon the Egyptians. So there was a darkness that came down. It was not the absence of light. And this darkness, this darkness would extinguish all of the candles that were in existence. Just like kasher b'koach chafirot hamukot, kol mekamot hachoshech ha'atzum lo yitkayem haner. Just like in any deep pit, an extremely dark place, a candle cannot stay lit. And I see your question, I just want to finish Nachmanides and his source for it. And then he refers to, like somebody who passes through the mountains of darkness. What is he referring to? The light will not be there. Now let me just stop for a second and say, we're going to have to come back to the mountain of darkness, what it is. But first, let me finish what Nachmanides says. And he says, that's why no man could see his brother, because it wasn't, even with the candle, they couldn't see, because the darkness in Egypt was not the absence of light, but it was just a thick darkness. And if it wasn't so, they would have used candles. And that's why it says, he sent darkness and made it dark. Shalach choshech v'yachshir. God did not just remove the light, he sent a darkness. Ki haya sharuach choshech lo afisat or hayom bavad. It was not just the absence of light. You know what it's like? It's like somebody who is in a dark place in life. You could be in this dark place in two ways. One, because you're just not letting the light in. You're blocking the light from coming in. You're closing out the light. Or it could be that there's something inside of you that's really dark. And then you just, like if there's something inside of you that's really dark, you can't just say, oh, okay, go for, I'll give you an ice cream and you'll be happy. That's not going to work if the person has the darkness inside of them. Then just opening up the light will not be enough. It won't be enough. So there's two types of darkness in the world. And Nachmanides is saying, it wasn't the first. It wasn't just that the sun didn't shine for 3 days. or 6 days. It was that there was an actual darkness sent upon them. This goes back to what we were saying before, that there was this deep gloom that was visiting upon them. I wanted, before we go to the questions that are raised about this, I want to turn and say, what's Nachmanides' source for this? What is this plague of darkness, the mountains of darkness that Nachmanides is referring to? What is this mountain of darkness that he's referring to? Nachmanides says, Nachmanides cites the mountain of darkness. This comes from a Talmudic text, from a tractate most people don't study too often. It's called Tractate Tamid 32a. Now I don't want to say the only one, but it's one of the few tractates in the Vilna edition of the Shas that doesn't begin in the beginning. It starts on page 25. So if you want to get a jump, this is the best tractate. It starts on page 25. So the tractate Tamid, the Tamid refers to the daily offering. But that was born in the temple. But this tractate has a conversation, probably apocryphal, but who am I to challenge the rabbis? A conversation between Alexander and the elders of the South. Alexander the Great and the elders of the South. And Alexander the Great asks them all sorts of questions, and the rabbis give their answers, and they impress him a great deal. And then Alexander the Great says to them, I want to go to Africa. How do I get to Africa? So the rabbi said to him, Amruleh, well, Matis Azlis, you can't get to Africa because the Paske Hare Choshech, because you won't be able to get there. Why? Because there are mountains of darkness that separate between Africa and the rest of the world, and nobody's going to be able to pass over because there's no light there. There's no light. It's the mountains of darkness. He said, Alexander the Great, there's a reason why he was Alexander the Great. He doesn't take no for an answer. He said, no way, it's impossible. I need to get there. So he says, that's why I'm asking you this question. So he said to him, give me an advice what I should do. So the elders of the South said, okay, bring some Libyan donkeys, and the Libyan donkeys know how to go in the dark. Their expertise at walking in the dark, and also bring like a rope and tie it on one side of the mountain and on the side where there's still light, and the other you hold a rope, and then follow the donkeys through the mountains of darkness. And when you get to the other side, you'll keep the rope, you'll tie the rope to the side of the mountain so you can just follow the rope back. So this is where I wanted to say, I wanted to go into a little bit what the mountains of darkness were, but don't you want to know what they found on the other side of the mountain? When he got to the mountains of darkness, you're going to love this. What happened when he came to the other side? He comes to the other side of the mountain. Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? All right. We're just studying together, so you do what you need to do, right? All right. I love you, Albert. Thank you. So that's a man who was repairing something that broke. So he said, so what happened next? So what happened next was he comes to the other side, and guess what he finds there? He finds a country which was run entirely by women. The women were in charge. So he said, he said, I want to make a war against you. And they said to him, no, you don't want to do that. And he says, yeah, I do. They said to him, no, you're not going to get anything out of doing that. If you beat us, you'll say you beat women. What's the big deal? And if we beat you, they'll say you lost to a woman. So he says, okay, fine. So he says, okay, give me some bread. So they brought him golden bread on a golden table. And he said, I asked for bread. They said, no, we know what you really wanted. He said, wow, you're the smartest people I've ever met in my life. That's what he says. Anyway, okay. So going back, that was a tangent about the women that he found there on the other side of the mountain. The question is, what is this mountain of darkness? So the commentaries explain what is this mountain of darkness. The one commentary called the Mefarish, meaning to say we don't know exactly who it is, he explains that there was a place that there was always darkness, and because it was always dark, nobody could cross over these mountains, and that's the reason why you couldn't light a light there, because it was always dark. It was exactly the same darkness during the plague of the Egyptians. It was like a thick darkness. But the commentary, the Chok Nasan, says about that why wouldn't there be light? So it doesn't make sense. How can you say the sun doesn't go there? Because the sun is right before there, right after there. So therefore, he says that there was very tall mountains, and they made almost like a cave-like place covering it, and so you couldn't walk through. But that's his rationalistic explanation of the Talmud. But comes along, the Gemara goes on, and the Gemara on the next page of the Gemara says that right after these mountains of darkness was the entrance to Gehenna, to hell. So what is darkness? Darkness is hell. If a person has darkness, they have hell. If somebody would ask, it goes the reverse. What's hell? Hell is darkness. That's what they're saying here. And another explanation was from the Zohar that says that there was the demons in this place of darkness, and God tied them up there with the chains. But I think metaphorically and spiritually, what the Talmud is saying is that if somebody's living in darkness, that's really a place of Gehenna. It's a place of hell. And so that's what the Ramban is saying, is this plague that affected the Egyptians was not simply the absence of light, because that could have been brought in. It was a plague of pure darkness, an actual substance. And that plague is hell, was the plague of hell. Yeah, so I see that Bruce or April have a question.